Hello, today I have a mountain scene and we are going to be covering lesson 7.3, I can solve two-step inequalities. These will be covering pages 217 through pages 222. And after this lesson, we will be getting very close to a test. We'll have a little review and then a test. So if you want to pause the video and get your math book, we will be there in a moment. Okay, we are on page 220, and I'm going to do this one under the document camera. So yesterday or the day before when you watched the video, the last video, we were just writing the equations. Now we're actually going to solve them for the variable. Works the same way as it did when there was an equal sign there. Your goal is to get the variable, put that up at the top, your goal is to get the variable by itself using, I hope you're all saying that out there in Cyberland, inverse operations. That's our goal. It's always our goal. So we're going to take a look at our inequality. We have 5d minus 13 is less than 32. So we're going to first move our 13 over to that side by adding 13. That's inverse operations. If you subtract 13, the opposite of subtracting is adding. So whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other side. We add 13. That will then cross off our 13s. We have a negative 13 and a positive 13, leaving us just with 5d less than, what's 32 plus 13? 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 1 is 4. 45. We have to get rid of our 5, so this is a multiplication, 5 times d. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by 5 to both sides. I'm trying to squeeze that in there. If I divide by 5, these two 5s will cross off and become 1s. So my answer will just be left with a d less than 45 divided by 5, 9. 5 times 9 is 45. So d is less than 9. Now we have to graph that. So we have to find 9 on our number line. So it's between 8 and 10, right in the halfway. So this does not include equals to 9, so we're going to have to use what kind of circle? Yes, an open circle. And which way is our arrow going to go? Is it going to go to the right or to the left? Exactly, d is less than 9. So our arrow that we're graphing is going to go to the left. Okay, that was number 2. I need to pause the video and get that down. Go ahead. Move on to number 3 then. Number 3, we have negative 4b plus 9 is less than or equals to negative 7. I'm going to use my inverse operations. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. If I subtract 9 from the left side, I get a positive 9 and a negative 9, which comes out to 0. So I can eliminate that. I'll be left with negative 4b is less than or equal to. Be careful on negative 7 minus 9. That is the same as negative 7 plus a negative 9. So you owe me $7, you owe your mom $9. Altogether, you owe a negative 16, correct? We're not finished yet. B is not by itself. We have to use inverse operations. We are going to divide by negative 4. We're going to divide by negative 4. Now I'm going to put this in red. We need to reverse the sign, the inequality sign. Don't forget, when you multiply, or divide by a negative number, you have to reverse the sign. So the negative 4s will cancel out. We will be left with AB because the negatives cancel out. And now we reverse the sign. Greater than or equals to negative 4 divided by negative 16 divided by negative 4 will give us a positive 4. Don't forget that reversal. And now we have to graph that. So to graph that, we have a greater than or equals to. So we're going to put that on the 4. Now, what kind of circle do I need there? Colored in circle or open circle? Well, or equal to. So yes, it has to be colored in this time. And B is greater than or equal to negative 4. So our arrow is going to go to the, exactly, to the right. So we're going to graph it like this. Okay, need to pause the video, go ahead. I'm going to move on from there to number 4. Here's number 4, same page, 220. This one's asking a little something different. It wants us to circle any given values that make the inequality true. Well, there's a couple ways of doing this. I'm going to do what we just did first, and then I'm going to show you the other way. So we're going to use inverse operations to get the variable by itself. So we're going to subtract 18 from both sides. The positive 18 and the negative 18 will give us 0, so we can just drop that off. And we'll be left with 2m is greater than, be careful on this, is negative 4 minus 18, which is the same as negative 4 plus a negative 18. So again, you owe me $4, you owe your mom 18. Altogether, you're in the hole how much? $22. Correct. Now you have to divide by 2 to both sides. The 2 over 2 will cross off. You'll be left with just an m, or a 1m is greater than. Now we did not divide by a negative number, so we do not reverse the inequality sign. Negative 22 divided by 2 is negative, exactly, 11. So asking our question over here, which number will work? Well, let's draw that out on a number line here for a moment. So we have negative 12, negative 11, negative 10, negative 9, etc. So we know that negative 11, we're going to have an open, we'll do this different color, open circle because it's not equal to, but it's going to be numbers greater than negative 11. Numbers greater than negative 11 are numbers that get closer and closer to 0. So that is the direction. So then we can go back up here now that we've got it graphed, and we can say, well, negative 12, will that make the statement true? If we plug in negative 12 for m, will that make the statement true? Well, here's negative 12. I can show you that. There's negative 12. That is outside of our range, isn't it? How about negative 11? That is outside of our range because of the open circle. How about negative 10? That is inside of our range. So the only answer that will be true is negative 10. Now, I wanted to show you there is another way of doing this. It takes a little bit longer, so I would suggest this method. However, some of you may prefer this other method. So let me just bring this paper down a little bit for a minute. So you could just plug in the values they give you and see which one yields a true statement. So we have 2m plus 18 is greater than negative 4. And they give you the value of m equaling negative 12, m equaling negative 11, and m equaling negative 10. So if I plug in negative 12 for m, I would get, so here this is plugging in m equals negative 12. I would then get 2 times negative 12 plus 18 is greater than negative 4. So if I plug that in, I have to do multiplying before adding, order of operations. 2 times negative 12 is negative 24, plus 18 is greater than negative 4. Negative 24 plus 18, that should give me negative 6. It's greater than negative 4. Is that a true statement? Is negative 6 greater than negative 4? No, that is a false statement. So then I can eliminate m equaling negative 12. Then I try m equaling negative 11 and plug that one in for m. And I would do 2 times negative 11 plus 18 is greater than negative 4. So 2 times negative 11 is negative 22 plus the 18 is greater than negative 4. Negative 22 plus 18, it should be negative 4 is greater than negative 4. Is that a true statement? Is negative 4 greater than negative 4? No, it is not. They're equal. So that's a false statement as well. So that does not work. So then we move down a little bit and we're going to try negative 10. 2 times negative 10 plus 18 is greater than negative 4. 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. Plus 18 is greater than negative 4. What's negative 20 plus 18? Negative 2. And then greater than negative 4. Is that a true statement? Is negative 2 greater than negative 4? Well, it's negative 2 closer to 0 than negative 4 on the number line. Yes, so this is a true statement. And we already knew that because we figured it out the other way, but the only answer that will then work is negative 10. So you have the option of plugging in the numbers into the equation, but then you've got to plug each number in. If you do this, you can graph it, and then you already know what numbers will work. So let's do number 5 now. And I'm going to use the shortcut method. Number 5 is asking us to do the same thing, and they're giving us 3 values. I'll put those 3 values in. They're saying we have a y equals 1, a y equals 1/2, and a y equals 0. They're going to say which values will make that a true statement if you plug that in for y. So I'm going to use the get the variable by itself using inverse operations method. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. 3 minus 3, it's going to give me 0. I cross that off. I'm left with negative 6y is greater than or equal to 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Move up a little bit. Now I have to divide by exactly negative 6 to both sides. Be careful. We have to reverse the sign. Why? Because we are dividing. So remember, if you divide or multiply by a negative number, you have to reverse the sign. So we are dividing by a negative number. So negative 6 divided by negative 6 will cross off and just give us 1, or just y by itself. Flip the sign, less than or equal to negative 3 divided by negative 6. That one we can reduce to 1/2, and it's going to be positive because the 2 negatives divided by each other makes a positive. So let's graph that. Graph that right here. So I'm going to put some half marks on here for that one. Oops. So let's do 1 and 1/2, 1/2, 0, negative half, negative 1, etc. So now we know that y has to be less than or equal to 1/2. So it's going to be a closed-in circle, and it's going to be less than 1/2. So the graph is going to go that direction. So now we can go up here and we can figure out which ones will work. Well, if y equals 1, that's over here. That's past our graph, so that will not work. Y equals 1/2. Well, we have a closed-in circle, so that will work. What about y equals 0? Well, here's 0. It's inside of our graph, is it not? It's on the purple. So both answers will be correct. So that has 2 answers. If you prefer, you could plug in the numbers into the original equation and solve to see what gives you true statements. But you'd have to try all 3 of them, so it's a little more time consuming. Okay, I want to do the last ones on the screen, and I wanted to just bring up the standard for today. Standard EE4. I can solve inequalities in the form of px plus q, meaning like 3x plus 4, is greater than some number r, or px plus q is less than some number r, and I can graph the solution. So that's the standard we're working on today. So let's look at number 6. Lizzie has 6.5 hours to tutor. Pull that up. 4 students and spend 1.5 hours in a lab. That just means she has 6.5 hours of tutoring time, plus she's going to spend another 1.5 hours, let's say, studying herself. She plans to tutor each student the same amount of time. The inequality 6.5 minus 4t is less than or greater than or equal to 1.5. Can be used to find t, tells you what t is, the amount of time in hours that Lizzie could spend with each student. Solve the inequality. That's going to be getting the variable by itself using inverse operations. Graph and interpret the solution. Can Lizzie tutor each student for 1.5 hours? So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to bring that up over here. I'll bring myself down here somewhere. Okay, so we are going to rewrite the equation. The inequality minus 4t is greater than or equal to 1.5. And we are going to use inverse operations. So we are going to subtract out a negative 6.5 to both sides. I'm going to underline so we can show that we're doing that. And I don't like how this is so far apart. So let's move that closer together. Okay, so we know that our 6.5s will cross off because that'll just become zeros, leaving us with negative 4t, don't forget there's a negative in there, is greater than or equal to 1.5. I don't want to underline the 1.5. There you go. Now we have to use inverse operations to divide by, you're right, negative 4. So let's do that. Divide by negative 4 to both sides. Negative 4. What are you thinking? I hope you're thinking what I'm thinking. Reverse the inequality because you are dividing by a negative number, correct? So make sure you do that. So if we do that, you just draw the negative 4s will cross off and become 1. 1 times t is just going to be t, so we can drop the 1, and we're just left with t is greater than or equal to, let me just put a little underline under that, what is t greater than or equal to 1.5 divided by -4? Use your calculator. That should come out to, we have a negative there. Oh, this should be a negative here because -6.5 is bigger than 1.5. So it's actually a subtraction, and it should give us -5. I don't want that to be underlined. Do you see how I got that? I had to take 6.5. I'll write that so you can see that. I have to take 6.5, and because it's negative, I have to subtract it from 1.5. So it's always good to question yourself when you're doing your math to make sure that things look right. So we're going to end up subtracting, and 6 minus 1 is 5. So it's going to be 5.0 negative because the negative 6.5. So that's where I got the -5. So now I guess I do want that underlined there. The -5 divided by the -4 is what? Well, we could do long division if we wanted to, or we could just do a decimal. If I do a decimal, I'm going to divide. I'll actually show that, sort of show that for a minute. I'm going to put the -5 on the inside. That's a bad 5. And the -4 on the outside. And I'm going to divide, and I'm going to get a 1, which is going to be, I'm going to get rid of, we don't need the negative sign there. We know the answer is going to be positive because two negatives make a positive. 5 minus 4 is just going to give us 1. So if we wanted to keep going into a decimal, we could do that. We could put a decimal there and bring down a 0. And it would be 10. How many 4s go into 10? Well, that would be 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Just want to make sure that I'm recording because sometimes I forget. Yep. And bring down the 0. It's a bad 0. Running out of room here. Becomes a 20. 4 into 20 goes 5 times. So 1.25. So that's how that comes out. So 1.25, and it will be positive because the two negatives will make it positive. So now that I have that, what is the question asking us? Solve the inequality. We just did that. T is greater than or equal to 1.25. Graph and interpret. So we would graph it. So we would have a graph, and we would have some numbers here. So we need to be greater than 1.25 or equal to it. So we would start it at 1.25. And then we would go to maybe 1.5. Kind of get the picture here of what's going to happen. And then maybe 1.75. That's 7. And then 2.0. So get rid of all this for the moment. I don't need all that on the screen. So if we graph that, we would start at 1.25 and go that direction because t is greater than it. And we would also be sure to make sure we fill in our circle at 1.25. And your number line will probably look a lot better than mine because you're using a pencil. Now let's see if we've answered all the questions. We have to go back. So can Lizzie tutor each student for 1.5 hours? Well, where is 1.5? You know what we forgot to do? We forgot to actually reverse the sign, didn't we? I'm going to do that. See, I wrote it down and I didn't do it. Good thing to check. Then that changes everything, doesn't it? That will change the direction. T is less than 1.25 or equal to it. So we're going to put our circle there. And we're going to draw our arrow going the other direction. So I probably should put a few more numbers in there. So if I was to do that, I would end up with maybe 1.0 would be in there. Let me put red there. We could put another one, 1.0, and then we could put negative 1.25, etc. We don't really need to put the negatives in there. That doesn't make sense in the context of the problem. So now if Lizzie wants to tutor each student for 1.5 hours, it's actually outside of our graph. So I want to just see if I can highlight something. I don't know if you can highlight things on here. I would love to highlight that we had to reverse the sign. I don't think we can do that. Oh. So anyways, so the answer is no. No, Lizzie can only tutor students for 1.25 hours or less. Do not forget to reverse the sign or your whole answer will be wrong. So it's a good thing we checked on that. How do you solve a two-step inequality? Well, goal is to get the variable by itself using inverse operations, right? Exactly. That's how you do it. So now homework-wise, if there's any others I wanted to do with you guys. I think just one more. So your homework, let's go to the homework. Clear all this. So your homework is to review, and what page did we just do here? I think it was 220. Yes, review page 220. I skipped number 1 if you didn't notice, because that's using those tiles. We're not doing that. And then complete page 221. That should be enough. I wanted to look at number 18 because number 18 is a little bit on the harder side. So that's on page 221. Let's take a look at number 18. The perimeter of a rectangle is 80 inches. The length of the rectangle is 25 inches. The inequality 80 minus 2w is greater than or equal to 50 can be used to find w, the width of the rectangle in inches. Solve the inequality and interpret the solution. How will the solution change if the width must be at least 10 inches and a whole number? So we have to solve the inequality. So I don't know if I'll do this whole problem with you. I might just set it up for you, is greater than or equal to 50. And you're going to solve for w. W is going to give you some number when you solve it. W is going to equal question mark. You solve that, figure out what that is. And then the second part of it is asking you, how will the solution change if the width must be at least 10 inches? So then you're going to list the numbers that fit the, it's not going to be equal to, it's going to be inequality. They're greater than or less than. You have to decide. List the numbers that fit the criteria. So that's how you're going to do number 18. The other ones are pretty straightforward. They're pretty much what we've been doing, and then you have to graph them. So if you have any questions before then, please email me, and we will see you. Just stop. There we are. We will see you next time. Have a good day. Bye.